The most horrific facts about slave breeding farms in the United States. Nobody talks about those chilling stories of U.S. slave breeding farms where the innocence of young girls was shattered and they were forced to carry babies. Yes, talking about that merciless slave breeding that showed us next-level brutality and inhumanity of history. In this video, we will look into the most horrific facts about slave breeding farms in the United States and how they broke all records to mistreat slaves, especially women and young girls, for their so-called business. Fact number 1. Slave women were used as reproducing machines by multiple males. One of the most disturbing realities about sex farms during the era of slavery is the dehumanization and exploitation of enslaved women. These women were viewed as mere breeding machines by plantation owners and overseers. Their purpose was solely to produce more enslaved individuals, thereby increasing the wealth and power of those in control. On these plantations, enslaved women endured physical and sexual abuse with no means of escape or recourse. They were regarded as property, stripped of their humanity, and treated as objects to fulfill the desires of their owners. Additionally, many slave narratives recount the experiences of enslaved women who were subjected to forced breeding. One such account is that of Harriet Jacobs, an enslaved woman from North Carolina in the mid-19th century. In her memoir, Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl, Jacobs vividly describes the horror of being compelled to engage in sexual relations with her owner for the purpose of producing children. Fact number 2. Slave women were routinely subjected to sexual abuse by their owners and supervisors, including being forced into relationships. Beyond their forced labor, slave women were subjected to sexual relationships imposed upon them by their owners or overseers. Owners and overseers would exploit their power and authority to coerce slave women into sexual relationships, often marked by violence and non-consent. Consequently, many slave women became pregnant due to these forced encounters. The children born from these relationships were not considered the legitimate children of their fathers, but were regarded as the property of their enslaved mother's owners. It meant that these children were enslaved and could be bought, sold, or traded as commodities. The story of Sally Hemings serves as an example of this practice. Hemings, a slave woman owned by former U.S. President Thomas Jefferson, was forced into a sexual relationship with him, resulting in the birth of 6 children, 4 of whom survived to adulthood. While Jefferson did not publicly acknowledge these children as his own during his lifetime, subsequent DNA evidence has confirmed their paternity. Another tragic case highlighting the brutal reality of sexual abuse is that of Celia, a slave woman owned by Robert Newsom in Missouri. Newsom repeatedly raped Celia, and when she became pregnant, he refused to acknowledge the child as his own. In an act of self-defense, Celia killed Newsom. However, she was tried, convicted of murder, and ultimately hanged. Fact number 3. After weaning, children born on sex farms were taken away from their families and sold. Family separation was a common and disturbing practice on slave plantations, but it was especially common on sex farms. Children born on such farms were not part of nuclear families and were considered commodities to be exploited. Slave children were considered more valuable than enslaved adults, so their sale was encouraged by plantation owners. Both parents and children suffered emotionally and psychologically from these painful separations, and their effects lasted throughout their lives. Children lost the primary source of love, care, and protection, while parents endured the anguish of being forcibly separated from their beloved children. Fact number 4. Some plantation owners during the age of slavery reportedly offered incentives to slave men who fathered the greatest number of children. It's hard to wrap your mind around the fact that certain slave sex farms actually rewarded men for fathering many children with different women. Slave males were incentivized by plantation owners to have large families so that they might sell their progeny for a profit. This distressing custom further cemented slave status as property, deprived them of any chance of independence, and further dehumanized them. Slaves were poisoned by being forced to compete against one another for the approval of their masters. So that's all for today's video. Let us know your thoughts on this in the comment section. Subscribe for more.